This is the third day of this August 1987-day sesshin. We shall continue reading from The Tiger's Cave, edited by Trevor Leggett, the commentary on the Heart Sutra by the Abbott Obora, who's a contemporary abbot of the Soto sect in Japan. Today we will read in chapter 2, which is called The Circle of Life. And in small letters, the two first lines of the Prajnaparamita are printed. When the bodhisattva Kannon was practicing the profound Prajnaparamita wisdom, he saw all the five aggregates to be emptiness and passed beyond suffering. Now we begin the text. The bodhisattva mentioned is generally known as Kannon, though sometimes as Kanzijai, Kanjizai, or Kanzeon. In either case, the first character of the name Kan is seeing. And it means to see things as they really are. To see things as they are gives freedom. So the bodhisattva is called Kanjizai, the one whose sight is freedom. This freedom of seeing things as they really are, of clear seeing, being at the same time the freedom of action, of complete action, not partial action, partial to oneself or to someone who's close to one, but complete action without any part, which is also right action. One of the steps in the Noble Eightfold Path is right action. The first one being right understanding. Could also be called right seeing. The next one being right resolve, intention. To see clearly what needs to be done, and then to do it. So the seeing, the resolve, and the action are not three. Obora continues, if asked what Buddhism is, I say, Buddhism is seeing everything as it really is. What a simple answer in our most complicated lives. Seeing things as they really are. Seeing everything as it really is. Seeing the real form of everything is Buddhism. You can also say seeing the real form of everything is seeing the real form of everything. We don't see the real form. We think we do. But in fact, we don't. When we consider the I, the capital I, whether it is something lasting or not, outside Buddhism they always presume that the self must have a form, or a soul or something. They make it something quite definite. But in fact, it is an error to think there is a permanent self which we call I. But they make the assumption of a lasting self. And then through education they come to think of it as something absolute. And most people think that self-development is the aim of education. To develop the self into something. What are you going to be when you grow up? Or enrich the self. Expand the self. Always the self in the middle. And the self of the educator in the middle. If we go deeply into the question whether the I is after all really existent, if we go deeply into the question, not just think about it a little bit here or there, but go deeply means just that, beyond all thought, then we shall find out that it is not. The conviction of an existent I, a superimposition of what is really non-existent, is called in Buddhism clinging illusion. Once having taken the non-existent as existent, on top of it we construct the worlds. Actually, it's not the I that constructs the mountains and the valleys, the forests, the meadows and the flowers, the birds and the deer. They're not constructed by the I. The idea and the word. And what goes with the word, wanting it or not wanting it, clinging to it or fearing it, that's constructed by the I. What is definitely constructed by the I is the way we relate to each other. With reservation, with suspicion, with resentment, with affection, clinging, lording it over each other, dominating each other, trying to possess each other, trying to outdo, outwit, or abuse each other. This is what is constructed by the I, by the thousands and millions of eyes, and this is the world. Our own unclear, self-centered, partial relationships are the confused, partial, and sorrow-ridden relationships in this whole world. How does one go about bringing order? Out there or here? Or is there any dividing line? Obora continues, on the foundation of a non-existent I, it's really not that it's non-existent, it's a bundle of thoughts and images, memories, remembrances, past experiences, and all the cravings. That's the I. Some people say, well, my ego, it's really non-existent. It can be the supreme rationalization. Observe it and you see how real it is. Trying to assert itself and the manifestation of it being very real. Very observable and very feelable, if not by oneself, then by others around one. On the foundation of a non-existent I, there are laughter and tears and sorrow. This is the basis of all errors. Fundamental ignorance of knowing who one really is, beyond all these thoughts and images and memories, fears and anticipations, and defenses. Upon defenses upon defenses, out of which comes aggression. Aggression and defense always go together. Obora continues, but the bodhisattva Kannon sees the true form of everything. That true character is the character of emptiness. Maybe you could substitute the word essence. True essence is the essence of emptiness. We call our I what is ultimately an empty form. Conglomeration of thoughts. A battlefield of thoughts, really. Not a unison of thoughts, but a battlefield. Internal contradictions everywhere. The bodhisattva has freedom because his wisdom pierces to the true form. And so he's called the bodhisattva of freedom. Lives in that true form, lives in that emptiness, or out of that emptiness. The true form is emptiness, is no form. True form is no form, meaning no fixed form, fixed as a word, a category, a concept that is fixed. But we're not fixed. We change all the time. True form is emptiness. The bodhisattva of freedom realizes the form of no form in everything. Because he doesn't attach labels, except where it is necessary and convenient to communicate. But not to characterize somebody or to pin a label on someone or something. That pin sticks and smarts. This bodhisattva realizes the no form, the principle of ultimate emptiness, particularly in sounds. So he is often called Kannon or Kanzeon, namely one who perceives the sounds of the world. Actually, in the Surangama Sutra, it is related by this bodhisattva himself, how he came to enlightenment through going to the source of a sound and going beyond it, not stopping there. But for the bodhisattva, it's not just the hearing of the chirping of the birds, but the cries of this world, the sorrow of this world, which is the sorrow of the human beings making up this world, of confused and perverted relationships. Now there is Kannon in the hand, for instance, and then again in the eye, E-Y-E. And so it is that the bodhisattva is called thousand-armed and thousand-eyed. Tibetans particularly have made magnificent statues of thousand-armed Kanons, a whole nimbus of arms, reaching in the 10 directions, meaning everywhere. Each hand with an eye, meaning a seeing hand, not a partial hand that wants for itself, wants to receive for itself or give for its own self-fulfillment. But a seeing hand in which there is no I, capital I, but a seeing I. They represent him with 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Elsewhere it is said that he's all hand and that he's all eye. But although his power of penetration and freedom works in everything, it is especially in regard to sounds that his virtue is manifested. And so he's named Kanzeon, he who perceives the sounds. Again, meaning the sounds of this world, of the sorrow of this world. It's interesting that Obora refers to Kanzeon or Kannon as he. That's what it's usually referred to. But most or much sculpture of Kannon, particularly the Chinese, one doesn't know it. Is it a man or is it a woman? At home we had a little sculpture of a Kannon. We have it now in our basement, where we have a zendo. And that little Kuan Yin, always was a woman to me. Sitting so erect, so free, and yet no rigid posture. One leg, one knee is sticking up a little bit, the other one down. You see this often in Chinese sculpture of Kannon, maybe one hand just reaching into space, freely floating, unsupported. So it doesn't really matter whether he or she, man or woman. Kannon is beyond all such dividing lines or division. Which doesn't mean there needs to be division between man and woman. It's a very natural occurrence. Human life, Obora continues, can in fact be considered as sound. Human life can be considered as sound. A city almost never goes to rest. Sometimes between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, if you're lucky. Or else there's this constant hum. Hum of cars, of talk, of radio. Human life can in fact be considered as sound. Mostly human nature expresses itself in sound. We talked a little bit about this in the beginning, about this extra sound, which is the expression of me wanting to hear its pseudo-existence. Getting sort of eerie feeling if it doesn't hear itself. A man's whole character is revealed in his voice. There's a saying that if you get a man to open his mouth, you can see his insides. And it is true that you come to know a man's spirit, his inner nature, if you make him say something. Sometimes in Zen there's a saying, he opened his mouth and his liver, gallbladder, and all intestines were revealed. Not to be taken literally. Nobody can open their mouth that wide. Meaning the clarity, the openness. Complete lack of hiding or hiding behind. No images. So it is that nothing is so important as what we say. Nothing is so important. We can also say so far-reaching, having such impact as what we say. When there's harmony in the intercourse of words, the household will be at peace. And mutual harmony in speech is the first manifestation of peace. Such is the importance of sound. Because one must not confuse this with a sound facade, a stilted politeness, a trained politeness. But a natural, spontaneous way of speaking and communicating. Not to talk good because one wants to be the good kid. One wants to be loved and liked by everyone. This fear of not being liked makes one do all kind of distorted things. Saying things one doesn't really mean. Also called polishing the apple. Saying what one thinks the other person likes to hear. Laughing when the other one makes a joke. That's always shown sometimes in cartoons or movies. You know, the director at this big huge conference table, he says something, everybody laughs. May not have been a good joke at all. But of course you gotta laugh. You want to stay on that board. Keep your position. Which makes the director a lonesome man. I wrote something out from a sutra, Anguttara Nikaya Sutra, one of the early sutras, which says something about right speech. Let's read from that. Describing the man of right speech. Man always interchangeable with woman. It doesn't matter. He speaks the truth, is devoted to the truth, reliable, worthy of confidence. He never knowingly speaks a lie, neither for the sake of his own advantage, nor for the sake of another person's advantage, nor for the sake of any advantage whatsoever. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there, so as to cause dissension there. What he has heard here, he does not repeat there, if it causes dissension there. It's a very subtle thing, which takes subtle, delicate sensitivity. Myself, having grown up from childhood on and in the formative years in a totalitarian regime where one wrong word would land you in the concentration camp, not only you, but your family, or from whom you heard this wrong word, developed an incredible anxiety and fear about saying the wrong word. It can penetrate your bloodstream very deeply. And yet always admiring those few people who had the guts, or whatever they had, to say freely what they felt to be the truth of the situation, and ready to give their life for it. Because if it only meant being killed with no effect, but who knows the effect? Maybe it was more intelligent to just walk out on the situation, leave the country, as many people did, which also took some guts, because you had to leave behind what you possessed. So, it's not a rule of thumb not to say what causes dissension. Sometimes dissension is needed. It takes very, very subtle discernment. Not to repeat what one has heard if it just causes anger, resentment, jealousy, and all of that in other people, then it only sows seeds for oneself and others. Thus he unites those that are divided, and those who are united he encourages. If there's true unitedness, does that need encouragement? In true unitedness, there is no me or you. What is it that needs to be encouraged? It's the only true working together of people when there are no me's, but just seeing and doing together what needs to be done. The action that comes out of that is its own encouragement. It is an encouragement. It's the joy of doing things together. Freely interchanging how one sees the situation. Because each of us, even though we're not divided, we're all different. There's not one human being that's exactly the same as the next. Not one. Mathematicians, statisticians tell us there's no chance for that. He avoids harsh language and speaks such words as are gentle, soothing to the ear, loving, going to the heart, courteous and dear, and clear, and agreeable to many. Not agreeable to be loved and liked. There's a motive in that, and there's a little raspiness then. But if one is sensitive to others, if one is those others, why would one want to hurt? Which doesn't mean that the helping words are always the soothing words. Because the comfort that a person in sorrow clamors for may not be the right remedy at all. Rather the seeing into the sorrow and the non-separation, rather than just soothing words, well, you'll feel better in a while. You'll get over this. And then nothing has been resolved. How to know what to say at the right time. How difficult. It needs Kannon, being all eye and all hand with all eye. He avoids vain talk and speaks at the right time, in accordance with facts, in accordance with facts. Not with rumors or with speculations. So difficult these days to get facts. Everybody claims to have made a scientific study of that. It takes really a truly trained scientist to know whether this was a scientific study at all. Studies on nutrition, etc. There is such a thing as a scientific method. There is. Mustn't be spurned or laughed away. There are serious scientists who understand the scientific method. and what is not scientific method. It's no small thing, it's a long-range and very painstaking thing to investigate facts as they are. But one doesn't need to be a scientist. One needs to have clear eyes. Also to see where one cannot see the facts clearly, because one doesn't know enough. So they're not just to repeat what somebody else claims are the facts. Very difficult. Not to be swept up in what's in vogue. Remain discerning and discriminating. Not out of general principle. But because it's necessary. He speaks what is useful. His speech is like treasure at the right moment. Or at the right moment accompanied by argument. Argument here meaning pointing out supporting facts. Not opinion, but supporting facts. Moderate and full of sense. This is called right speech. We continue with the Abbott Obora. Kannon bodhisattva is a being who has emptiness within the heart, whether crying or laughing. On a happy occasion, it is felicitation from the bottom of the heart. But within is emptiness. Doesn't mean coldness, but not clinging. Not wanting this beautiful moment to last forever, whatever that means. We wretched people don't do that. On the lips are congratulations, but in our heart, curse you. Wow. Yeah. It's so very often, isn't it? We have no freedom of sound, no spontaneity in our words. Holy Kannon has always emptiness in the heart, whether in joy or sorrow. He has freedom of mind. It is the power of ultimate emptiness. In the negative sense, it is emptiness. But in the positive sense, it means that in our crying and laughing, body and mind are one. This is a true spontaneity of speech. As Wei Nang, the sixth patriarch, said, this harmony of mind and mouth, not just to recite sutras with the mouth, but not see how one lives in the light of these sutras. When our words are directed to freeing others, when our words are directed to freeing others and freeing ourselves, the grace of Kannon will be in that place. Directing words to freeing others is pointing out things for others to see by themselves. It's a strange and difficult to understand thing that unless things have been pointed out, and not just once but time and again, it's very hard to see how one lives and talks and thinks and acts. Because we have so many ideas that take the place of that. So ingrained our habits, so hard to become aware of them. But if they're pointed out, there's a chance to become aware of it. Sometimes even if it has not been pointed out. In a sesshin, many people have many deep insights into themselves. In freeing ourselves, the grace of Kannon will be in that place. It's not the grace of Kannon. That is Kannon. Kanzeon. Bodhisattva of love, not something outside of ourselves. In deep understanding oneself and others, there's a wellspring of love. In which all division comes to an end. It cannot last. The bodhisattva attained the state of power and freedom by practice of the profound prajna paramita, practice of ultimate emptiness, practice of moon, right in the midst of what seems so filling, so dense and crowding inside. Moo, ahoo. When it is said profound, it has the meaning of complete. To penetrate deeply, deeply through our everyday life, and by the power of negation, to obtain freedom. Negation here, as we pointed out yesterday, not meaning repression or condemnation, withdrawal, but seeing what is false and negating that, abstaining from that, as one abstains from drinking poison. In the Nirvana Sutra, Obora continues, is the illustration of 3 animals crossing a river, and they represent 3 ways of living. The animals are elephant, horse, and hare, and they illustrate shallow and profound views of life. The hare slips along on the flotsam of the surface, and such is one who sees only the surface of life, and this only of the physical form. And when one just skims along the surface, the waves and foam can be overpowering, or seem so large as seen from that surface perspective. The horse crosses by swimming, half immersed in the water. Such goes a little deeper into life. The elephant forges steadily across with great strides along the bottom. Those big feet right on the ground. You know, these huge feet, and they're so sensitive. Anybody ever seen movies of elephants? Amazing, amazing animals. Such sensitivity. Such incredible care of the young. Yeah, to have one's big feet sensitively on the ground and not drown in all this water. And let the waves sweep over one. And then there's the free sky again. This sort of living is going right into life and penetrating to its real basis. And it is complete living. To live through all the layers, yet with the feet firmly yet sensitively on the ground. In the Nirvana Sutra, the elephant crossing the river stride by stride is the illustration of completeness in living. Now the hare is the symbol of taking life as the body. Think that one's only life that one lives is the life of this body here. This shell, this whatever it is. Completely identified with it. Not even knowing who it is that identifies with it. Such thinking is always escapist. It is the psychology of the shirker. The shallowest view of life is to consider it something which can be evaded. To think that one can escape by moving from here to there, or from one distraction to another, from one entertainment to another, from one relationship to another. Always from here to there, over there. There I may be happy. And my happiness, so I've been hearing all along, is the important thing. This is what my government guarantees me, or should, or ought to guarantee me. My happiness. Which unfortunately may collide with yours. But I don't want to think that far, because I don't want to think of your pain. It causes me too much pain. So I avoid that too. This is the superficial attitude of hoping to get out of our responsibilities. What is our responsibility in life? To find happiness? Or to be responsible, responsive? First and above all, for one's own actions. so that they don't contribute to the confusion of the world. I have my role in life, which may be a coolie or a cleaner. My allotted part, says Obora, was that of a priest. Each has his own. To be religious, this is used as a noun, is also a role. I don't know whether it has to be a role. I don't know what he means here by role. Would have to hear what he says in Japanese. Why does it have to be a role? Why do we have to play any roles? Except if we're an actor, then we better play it well. And I sometimes wonder whether the role of a religious man is not rather an unworthy one. Among religious people, I'm of no account. But even so, I always seem to be getting pushed into things by flattery. This man is if you have ever read this or read farther than this, I don't know how far we'll get with it, incredibly honest man. Brings tears to your eyes how honest he describes himself. I always seem to be getting pushed into things by flattery. All the time one is being flattered. Now he quotes, "No one but your reverence. Please, may we have a few words from you, your reverence." One gets caught. And there's nothing for it but to comply. One cannot help a feeling of being pushed into things. Oh, to find some way to give it up and retire. Buried snugly in a temple in the country. That's an illusion. A temple in the country. Where's that temple in the country? You haven't come across it yet? A tent in the country. It's easier to erect than a temple. But I understand in Japan there are beautiful temples in the country. One person just told me the other day, I don't know who it was. Met a man in Canada who's come from a new Rinzai temple that was just newly founded by a new man there, a new abbot in the country. It's a beautiful temple in the country in Japan. And you know what? They don't use the Kyosaku at all. Wonder where they sit for 16 or 14 hours a day. So here, to retire buried snugly in a temple in the country. Such thoughts may come. And yet, those who refuse to follow the flatterings, they're awkward fellows too. The fact is that everyone does act at the instigation of others. One has to look into all of this to see if this is so, and what is really meant here. If the flattery is seen, and the response to the flattery is seen, then does it have to push one? Which doesn't mean one doesn't do what someone asks one to do. But is it because one is being flattered? I doubt that this man does it just because he's flattered. He doesn't sound like this at all. But the response to the flattery comes up because he's a human being. We're all alike, responding to flattery. If it is not seen, then we're in a trap. Even such a great man as Saigo, whoever he was flattered by others into doing things. And to follow the flattery and try to do what they want is all right. But in any case, however flattered, we don't escape our role in life, meaning our responsibilities. How to respond to flattery is no small thing. It's a real thing to look into, to flattery and to blame. To discern that and not to be overpowered by it. Not to have a reaction with it, for it, or against it, but to be free. Is it possible? Everyone must investigate this for him or herself deeply. It is the subject of several koans. We will continue with this tomorrow.